seconds. Hey everyone, welcome to this new show of LinkedIn for Leaders, a show that we do every week to help leaders form their personal narrative in a engaging, deep, layered, informative way through conversations that we have with other leaders. And today I'm very grateful to welcome to the show Robin Doenicke. Hey Robin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Khan. It's a pleasure to be here. It's so great to see you again. It's been many, many years.
It's been many years indeed. And I'm going to share maybe a quick anecdote connected to that. But before I do that, I'm going to just share a quick introduction about Robin. Robin is presently tuning in from Japan. And he's the founder and CEO of Zensho Agency, an international executive search firm with offices in Tokyo, London, Sydney, and New York. Zensho, which means whole life, reflects Robin's belief that we should live our lives holistically with purpose, passion, and presence. He recognizes that connections can change lives, and his mission is to fulfill his why through helping others fulfill theirs. Robin is also a mindfulness aficionado, a meditation and breathwork teacher, a lifelong martial artist, and an executive coach who seeks to transform the lives of those he serves. Robin's motto: this is it, let it flow. Welcome again, Robin.
Thank you. It's always funny to listen to your own little intro.
But it's so layered and so meaningful. And, just to the I'm actually so grateful that we're doing this conversation. I've been fortunate to know Robin for a good, 10 plus years, 10, 15 years now. We first connected about that time ago when Robin had come down and Robin is very high up in the Bujinkan ninjutsu world. And it's an ancient martial art form, which I've also been very fortunate to train for a while. And yeah, I think, like we said, right? Robin has this amazing zest for life, but also knows when that zest should pause. And I think that shows up amazingly in his work that he does today around mindfulness, meditation, and executive search, of course. And without much further ado, there are a bunch of things that I want to ask you about, Robin. So let's jump into it.
Let's.
So, first off, you've been running Zensho for 22 years now. What is the form or framework in training? We call that waza. So, that's a constant that allows for flow, free expression according to you. So, what is the form or structure that once you understand that and that framework, you internalize that, then that you can forget it and you can move more freely. And how can people apply this to themselves personally?
Yeah. Great question. And you mentioned just a second ago about you know these nice comments about me, but a lot of this kind of came through a lot of overwhelm, a lot of burnout, a lot of stress, all these types of things. And it wasn't like necessarily a conscious decision that I want to seek all this meditation and mindfulness path and all of that. It really became a necessity, born out of all the kind of striving and the stress of trying to build a business and all the things that come with that. So it was actually kind of in tandem with the martial arts I was doing in Japan, as you know, the Bujinkan martial arts. And really, early on in my training days, the Grand Master and the top teachers of the art would often say, I'm not teaching you techniques. I'm not teaching you how to fight. I'm teaching you how to live.
Yeah.
And as a young student, I didn't really care much for that. I wanted to learn techniques and I wanted to learn how to fight and all the rest of it. But then I learned fairly quickly that the great wisdom in what he was teaching us, and it went far beyond the walls of the dojo, and it was really applicable to every aspect of your life, and particularly whether you're working, whether you're running a business, whether you're working in a business, whether you are a parent, sports team, whatever. I mean, every aspect of your life, the principles of martial arts really apply. And to answer your question about form, I think I think earlier on in my kind of business journey, I was very much into trying to learn all the forms of all the people who've gone before me. Read this expert's book, read this, tycoon's approach to life, read these 7 habits and these 4 agreements and all the rest of it. And by the end of the few years, I had like 52 things I'm supposed to follow every day. And there was great benefit in all of those things to some degree. But like martial arts, that was akin to just learning a million techniques. And it wasn't about it. And it was only the more I was able to kind of go within, the more I was able to kind of seek rest and to kind of let go of all the incessant thinking. That's when real kind of growth and progress seemed to happen. And then I brought that to my business in terms of how I plan the business, how I approach every day, how I approach issues and challenges that arise. Less so about trying to think my way out of them, trying to think of the perfect strategy or trying to think of the perfect solution, and more just being as present as I can be, as open as I can be. And when I do that, there seems to be less agenda, less narrative. I mean, I think we have this narrative always going on in our minds about who we are, and much of that is formed from all of our life experiences and our conditioning, and the parents, our society, our teachers, everything is all kind of, we weave together this story of who we think we are and how we're supposed to respond. And I found it's been more of a process of peeling away those layers and getting to a truth, stillness. And from there, I find I'm able to respond to life, to work much more spontaneously, much more appropriately, without all kind of the agenda, the narrative that's clouding what needs to be done. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's less about having a strict type of form or strict approach, and more just trying to be present and aware and just fully engaged with whoever I'm speaking with or whatever I'm doing.
That's amazing. And I just want to call out, just before we went live, Robin actually mentioned that he's actually leaning a lot more into his meditation coaching, mindfulness coaching, and personal executive sort of coaching. So if I were to just sort of build on what you just mentioned here, Robin, if I paraphrase, you talked about how letting go can actually create a little bit more space, and peeling those layers can maybe allow you to show up in different ways that you might not have imagined before. But that it's easy to want to hold on to those layers, right? So is there a let's say a question or two or a way of looking at it that you feel could allow for someone to take that first step, that can allow for that first layer to come off? Anything that you would advise?
And I think, sometimes when I have a thought about something and maybe an issue arises at work or there's something happening and I have to deal with it, and I notice a thought appears, and I take a moment just to not react immediately to those initial thoughts. It's kind of like, you shake up a bottle, and if you open the cap, everything comes out. Let that happen first. Let that rise. It's kind of like the process of meditation. When you first sit down, just let yourself, once you relax, you're going to have this incredible kind of release of thoughts, right? Why am I doing this? I've got to do this. I've got to deal with this. I've got to deal with that. All the while you're sitting there trying to relax. And I think the more you can just let those thoughts come and go, like clouds in the sky. The thoughts will come, the thoughts will go. And I found that the less I take ownership of them, the less I try to grasp them, they come and they go on their own. And what I really try to tap into is what's that awareness, or what's that presence that's always there, that's aware of those thoughts. There's something that's aware of those thoughts. What's that?
And that's not you. I mean, that's separate from you. Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't say it's separate. I think that's the foundation. I think that's the beingness. And within that, this idea of me, this story of me, this narrative of me appears. And that story is wonderful. And that's how we engage with each other. That's how we relate to the world, right? But there's something there. It's almost like the foundation, like that you got the waves on the surface of the ocean, and that's your story. That's the ups and downs of the day, of life. But supporting that, beneath that, you got the ocean floor, which is still, which is calm. And I think we're always looking for kind of an outside fix for an inside job, and we're looking for peace and stability and certainty and non-change in a world that by definition is in constant flux. And this is beautiful line, and I don't laugh at my Sanskrit because I don't speak Sanskrit, but it's in the Bhagavad Gita, and it sounds something like Yogastra Kuru Kamati.
Okay.
And it's this term which apparently translates to first establish yourself in being and then perform action. And it's apparently the advice that Krishna gives to Arjuna when they're on the battlefield and he's wondering how he's supposed to respond, what he's supposed to do.
Should I kill my brothers or not?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, what am I supposed to do here? And this advice to first go in. It's like a tree. First you plant the roots and then the tree rises. With a building, you build the foundation, and then you build the structure. With a bow and arrow, you pull it back first. So you go in first before you go out. And meditation is great for that, but even just taking a moment of silence, just to let the thoughts come and go. And the more I do that, the less I react to my circumstances and the more I'm able to respond. And I think we react from our story, from our ego, from our fears, our anxieties, our stress, our tension. But we can respond when we're more present, when we're more aware. And it doesn't mean it's always going to be the perfect response, but it's going to be a response that's more appropriate, more spontaneous, less baggage. And it's the same in martial arts, to let go. You're in a battle with someone, you're in a duel with someone, you can't be fixated on what they're going to do. What if he does this, and I'll do this, and I'll do this, and he might do that. You've got to let go. You've got to be zero. You've got to just be aware, be present, and be open to what's going to unfold, and then respond appropriately. And I found that even when I go into a meeting, or even if it's it's a meeting where I know it's going to be a little contentious or it's going to be a little tense, rather than thinking of all the ways this could go wrong or might go right or what I should do, I just try to go in there with an open mind. And I think people feel that. They feel when there's no agenda. They feel when there's actual presence and they're being heard. That can be really disarming, which is a really beautiful thing. I mean, sorry to go on here, but it reminds me of when I first got to Japan early on. And I was, I was 24 at the time, and I thought I was pretty good. And I'm on a train in Japan, and there's some drunk guy, like a mafioso kind of guy, yakuza guy, and he's drunk, like pushing people, and he's getting a bit aggressive. He wasn't hitting anyone, but he's getting a bit aggressive. And I remember thinking to myself, I hope he comes over here because I'll show him a thing or two. I'll get him in this lock, or I'll do this. I'll take care of it. And I was feeling pretty good about myself. I was going to do something. And suddenly this old man gets up and just goes over to this guy and puts his arm around him and just starts talking to him. I didn't know what he said. And he just took the fight out of this guy. He took the fighting spirit out of this guy. And this guy just calmed down and started crying on this old man's shoulder. And it was in that moment I was a little bit ashamed, in that I thought what this old guy did was the true spirit of martial arts. It was the true essence of martial arts. He was just there, present. There was no agenda. There was no fight. There was nothing for this Yakuza guy to resist. There was nothing to land on. And it was a great lesson for me. I thought, wow, that guy could teach me a thing or two about martial arts. So hopefully I've learned a few things since then. But, it's just this idea of being present. I think authenticity is really the superpower of this day and age, in this age of technology and AI and deep fakes and all the rest of it. And even, in a business like mine with recruitment, I remember reading books, sales techniques and closing techniques and all these type of key phrases you're supposed to use. That stuff worked in the 80s, maybe. Today, people don't resonate with that. People want to see you. They want to know who you are with all your vulnerabilities, all your fears, all your imperfections. And people will either like you for who you are or they won't. And
that's a good thing, right? Like, I mean, briefly, like I've done a lot of theater over time. And as you would know also, right? I mean, training also is a little bit of theater. You're sort of living that moment. You're creating a live moment. And I remember one of my directors, she said, the best thing that can happen is someone walks out of the play is that they either liked it or they hated it. If they're indifferent, you didn't make them feel something, right? So
Mm.
just being,
Yeah, I like that. And the grandmaster of the martial arts that we study, I remember him talking about this idea of ninjutsu. The art that we do has a history of ninjutsu, and people have this idea. I mean, if you think about the word kieru in Japanese, it means to disappear, and people have this idea of ninjas, disappearing in a cloud of smoke and behind a tree and whatnot. But I remember the Grandmaster Hatsumi Sensei once talking to us about the true meaning of this term to disappear. A low level understanding is to jump behind a tree or something, but the deeper meaning is to this disappearing of self, this disappearing of me, of this idea, this story of me. And then what's left, right? When you get to this state, and this is what all the Zen masters would talk about, like, what is this? What's left when this story or this idea of me is not there? And that's when we hear these terms now, like the zone or in the flow. And we've all experienced it. Surfers on a wave, they're doing this great, what's it called? Is it the tube
yeah,
or
the
the
tube,
tunnel?
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
surf. Okay. So I'm one of the one Australians that doesn't surf. When they're in the tube, often you hear them talk about in that moment. There's no wave, there's no tube, there's no surfer, there's no board. There's just that pure
Yeah,
experience
yeah,
in that moment. And there's an absence. There's an
of self.
absence
Yeah,
of me, of self. And afterwards, then boom, a thought appears. The me
yeah,
returns, right? Oh, that was great. That was a great. Oh, I'd love to do that again. I'm thinking about it. How can I repeat that? But in that moment, there's this beautiful absence of self and story. And then there's this beautiful perfection that remains, this presence, this deep engagement. And that's flow. Flow is what happens when you are not there.
which is so, as you're talking about this, Robin, like I'm having this experience right now, in some ways being transported into class, because one of the reasons I love training the art form that we have is, sure, we have a sense of, okay, we will pick up this technique and try it, but it's like you're literally
Hmm.
painting on the floor. Like every expression is different every time, and so much of what you talked about, you mentioned the Bhagavad Gita, right? And you also mentioned artificial intelligence, and there's this ancient intelligence, and now we have this artificial intelligence, and there's this dichotomy and this sort of tension over there. And in your writing, because you write and you share your thoughts fairly prolifically, very often on LinkedIn, and you talk about everything from Stoicism to the Bhagavad Gita, meditation, your arts, martial arts practice, but your work per se is an executive search, but a lot of the time you're talking about all of this other stuff. I'd love to know why. Why is it important to talk about this, and what do you feel it reflects about your approach around executive search?
Yeah, great question. And firstly, I'm going to steal that line you used, ancient intelligence. That's my new definition of AI. I love it.
Amazing.
So I hadn't heard that before. That's great. So I'll definitely use that. Yeah, look, for me, running a recruitment firm, being a coach, being a martial arts teacher, mindfulness teacher, whatever. For me, it's all one and the same. It really is. Yes, I play different roles. I play many roles, as do we all. But really, look, I'm in the business of running a business. I have about 30 consultants across our offices. And my role really is more of a mentor, a coach, as the CEO. Yes, I have to deal with management stuff and running the business as well. But it's really about engaging with the people that we have. Hopefully, being there to help them discover and promote the potential that they have, and help them uncover that, and help them pursue that and fulfill that. So that's really much my
Hmm.
role in recruitment. So I don't see very much. I don't see any conflict between the two. And in terms of how I run the business, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I just wake up and I just go with the flow and that's all I do. I don't have anything. Look, I'm quite disciplined. I have a routine, if you will, but that's more of a personal kind of health and fitness routine and things I do. And I like to, try and get some of these tasks done each day that are moving me closer towards certain
And
goals, things
sorry to
like that.
interject, but to the audience, you should know that Zensho is a multi-award winning recruitment firm in Japan. They've won, like, Robin, I think, has been featured even on Entrepreneur Japan, the cover of Entrepreneur Japan. So they've got, it's like Robin said, it's not just about like showing up one day. There's a lot of structure that allows for this kind of expression. I just wanted to mention that,
Sure.
but
Yeah, and look, like you might recall, I used to say when I'm teaching workshops, martial arts workshops, is it's all well and good to say transcend technique and forget technique, but you've got to have the technique first
let
before you
go.
can let it go, right? It's like It's like telling a musician, okay, you have the scales, da, 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 you have your scales that you do. Mozart used to practice his scales every day. This is Mozart. Right? He would still do his scales every day. And it was from these 8 notes of the scale that you could create all the music that we have in the world, right? And it's, I think, like martial arts, you have your foundational techniques, you have your music, you have your foundational scales, your music, right? You have your basic form, if you will, that teaches you the discipline, that teaches you the habits, that gets the motor skills happening, like when you're driving a car even. I just posted about this today on LinkedIn, actually, about, we have to learn these things. It's very clunky at first when you're learning to drive, but then you have to kind of transcend. You can't be thinking about it all the time. Otherwise, it's going to be a very, very disruptive drive. But once you're able to transcend it, your body embodies the motions, the movements, that's when you really get to navigate. That's when you really get to pursue a certain destination. And that's when you get to create music. And I think what it is, it's really that space, like in music, it's that space between the notes that really makes the music come alive. Otherwise, it would just be, it's the space that's really important to bring the music alive. And I think that space is something we have forgotten to really nurture in life. We're so busy. We're so busy. We're always looking for the next thing.
Next dopamine hit all the time.
Yeah, it's almost like we're afraid to be with ourselves, right? So we're always looking. There's something to do, something to watch, something to ingest, something that's going to take us away from this moment when we're here with ourselves. But I think the more we can allow ourselves to just rest in this emptiness, even if it's just a few seconds, it'd be amazing. You'd be amazed how much that can actually have an impact on how the rest of your day unfolds.
I want to, and thank you for sharing. There's so much in there. There's this concept of Henka, which I love in our training, right? So where you have a form, and as part of getting to that point of freedom, you also try the antithesis of the form. You try the opposite of what you've learned as a means to understand that form in a whole different context. I'd love to know your sort of perspective on that. When you're approaching, say, meditation or mindfulness or coaching even, or executive search, when you hit some sort of roadblock, maybe, or in what context would you deploy this idea of an antithesis, just doing the opposite and seeing what that opens up?
Yeah, and something I think I've done actually for most of my life, and for better or worse, is, we have that expression in English to flog a dead horse, and that's something I don't typically do. If something's not working, I don't try to just keep hammering away at it. You have to be able to let go and go around, try something different. Now that's not what I'm not saying is give up or don't pursue it anymore, but you've got to be able to quickly realize that if an approach or a certain path or certain technique or a certain something is not working, is not being effective, is not getting you the result that you want, then it's less about trying to figure out a new way, but more just to let go of how something's supposed to happen. Let go of preconceived ideas about how it's supposed to turn out. Obviously, I have an idea about what I'm pursuing and what I would hope to happen. If I go into a business negotiation with a client, of course, I have an intention to come out in a strong position. But I've learned to let go of how that's going to happen and through which means that's going to happen, and kind of let things unfold. That way, I'm a lot more open to alternatives in the moment. And that's what I found. Like, if suddenly I can't go this way, if I'm fixated on this way, it's very hard to see any other way. You get the tunnel vision. So for me, the more I can just be open and present, when something's not working, you naturally shift, you naturally pivot. And that's kind of what I found, whether it's in business or martial arts.
Yeah.
It's like when you're singing. If you're singing with someone, you're harmonizing, and then they change the tune, they change the note, you naturally kind of adjust, right? You change with them, right? You naturally adjust.
And we've talked about so many different kinds of concepts, right? From like being more authentic, unlayering yourself, not being attached to a specific outcome, having a sense of where you want to get to, being open to whatever journey sort of takes you there. Now, we have the last 5 minutes. I just wanted to sort of get one or two quick hot takes. Time flies by very quickly, right? So just one or two quick hot takes, just specifically from this time of executive search, right? Because just drawing this parallel again about artificial intelligence and learning from ancient intelligence. But we also are in this time where, for a lot of people, the job market is very challenging, and I would say leaning into speaking more authentically, not having being attached to a specific way. Like if I were to contextualize that into the work that I do, a lot of the leaders that I work with, they want to see, okay, how many followers that I get, how many clicks that I get on XYZ. And I've actually found some of the people who are considered to be, at the top of the mountain where putting out their brand is concerned, they're actually not really bothered about some of that stuff. They're more in tune with the fact that this is who I am and this is how I would like to show up, but if you have a couple of quick hot takes in terms of how is it that leaders can make themselves a little bit more of an attractive proposition in this challenging time.
Well, I'd say the first thing is stop thinking about how to make yourself more attractive and start just being you. I mean, it's such a cliche these days to just, be you, you do you, all this type of thing. But it's the truth. I mean, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, I talk about going to Peru and working with a plant medicine called ayahuasca 15 times. And some people said to me, Robin, you're CEO of a recruitment firm. Maybe you shouldn't be advertising all that. This is who I am. If you don't like it, that's fine. But I'm trying to be myself, whether I'm meeting a client, a candidate, speaking with a colleague. And it's so liberating because you can drop the charade, drop the agenda, and just be yourself. And it's amazing how so much greatness will come out of every single person because everyone's got something great to offer, right? Everyone's got something unique to offer, and people will resonate with it. Again, like I said earlier, authenticity, presence, these are the best things you can do. And I think the more you can reflect that in what you talk about on LinkedIn or what you post about, it doesn't have to be, spilling all the beans and all the hardship in your life all the time. It doesn't have to be like that, but you can just be yourself. Just be yourself. And I heard this quote once: "Be yourself because everyone else is taken."
It's so true.
I think it's true. We're always trying to fit a certain mold, an expectation of what I want you to think about me or how I think I should appear. And I went through that myself, in my earlier years. And it's a heavy backpack you have to carry. It's so nice to put that backpack down and just move freely. And I think maybe that comes with age and experience a little bit, but I wish if I could go and tell my younger self, go back in time and tell my younger self, I'd just be telling him, hey, just chill, just relax, just let it be, as the Beatles said, let it be. And you'll be amazed what can happen.
So we literally have the last 2 minutes of the live, and I have two questions. One is, what is the one thing you can talk about every day for the next 1 year?
Me, what I could talk about? I could talk about non-duality, about discovering who you really are, waking up to your true nature.
Amazing. So that's something that people can look forward to in following you online, which everyone should.
Yeah.
And if they had to find you online and get in touch with you, how can they do that? What's the best way?
Probably the best way right now is through my LinkedIn profile. I'm about to set up a website which will be along the lines of sharing a bit more about this stuff I talk about, non-duality, philosophy, life, executive coaching, meditation, mindfulness, all of this type of thing. So I'll be setting up a website and have a separate email for all of that soon. But my LinkedIn profile is probably the easiest way to get in touch. And I welcome any questions or anyone that wants to share or just have a chat. I love that. So very happy to receive any connection requests or questions or anything like
Amazing. And we're pretty much right on time. Thank you, Robin. This is so nice we're literally connecting after, like I said, a decade plus, in this live conversation. And it's so nice that we're doing it this way. But I really appreciate your time and for you being here today.
No, look, thank you for inviting me. And again, I think I was trying to get so much out about so many different topics. It's probably confusing for everyone, but it was really fun. So
Yeah,
thanks
so
again.
definitely watch the episode, play it back, and and there'll be a lot to pick out. But thank you again to everyone else who's joined the live. We do this show every week. Next week we have a conversation with Christian Sarkar, who's written Seven Wicked Problems. He's the founder of the Regenerative Marketing Institute, which he's partnered with Philip Kotler, who's considered to be the granddaddy of marketing. He's written over 80 books, and Enrico Foglia. So we're going to have a really interesting conversation next week. Do look out for that one. Thank you again for joining. This is LinkedIn for Leaders. We do this live every Thursday. See you at the next one.